Snow has recently fallen. I decide to make something of it. Eventually, there, the scuffed and knockoff tan orange mounds, soles too thick to bend. I put on my old boots, out the door. The air is biting, the ground damp. Sun breaks the clouds, turning solid snow into slush. And I recall why I stopped wearing these things in the first place. There's a slight bump at the front of the right foot near the toes. Stop in the middle of the road, take it off, try to see if I can shake out a rock. Nothing falls. I smack the heel, feel around. I'm reminded of the saying, bite the bullet, kill yourself to live. Enough discomfort to make it unenjoyable, but not painful. I push a piece of gravel down the concrete. I watch the pebble dance, and reminded of past years. I see I left my laces undone, and that I'm walking perfectly within the sidewalk squares.
So what's going on? We're going to go through what I watched this month, the month of February 2021. I know my hair is all over the place and really long. I'm going to get it cut right after I film this. But I do think I'm going to go get a hat, so I'll be right back. Alright, so first up we have Fantastic Mr. Fox. Now, this is my probably third or fourth time I've seen this movie. I had to rewatch it for school because we were meeting, a bunch of people who had worked on the movie. And I gotta say, I mean, this really still holds up from what I remember as a child. I mean, I originally saw it probably when I was like 10 in the library basement and just watching it projected on that screen. And I mean, I remember coming out of that viewing and loving the movie, right? So, and then rewatching this now, so many years later, about 10 years after probably the first time I saw it, I gotta say I really love this movie. If you haven't seen Fantastic Mr. Fox, I mean, I really think it's worth watching, especially for something that's an adaptation. It feels like such a successful adaptation from the original source material, and it does it justice. And it's not like in one of these like hokey ways that we see a lot of the times when it comes to children's books adaptations. The characters display like similar inadequacies to human beings and fallibilities, and I think that's what makes them really easy to connect with. And obviously, like, there's the conscious choice that they're animals, because this story could really be told with people in a different form, but like it's a decision to make them animals, and they're not animals for the sake of being animals, per se. And the movie's a great lesson for kids, and it's really accessible to adults as well. I mean, the movie ends in defeat, which is like a great lesson, because despite everything that Mr. Fox had attempted to do, he pretty much brought his community into a worse position, but the movie teaches us to be able to live through and work through kind of things that happen in our life, despite if they're good or bad. An amazing documentary I watched this month is called Some Kind of Heaven by Lance Oppenheim. I gotta say, I love this. So it's a detailed portrait of the community, the villages in Florida, which is a huge retirement facility, retirement home, retirement village, I suppose, hence the name. And it follows these really interesting characters of these people who live in the villages and the different experiences people have and different relationship people have with the place itself. I mean, the title Some Kind of Heaven describes it as, because some people do regard this place as like heavenly, but other people, it's consumerist rot. And you have this character who husband died shortly after she moved here, or this man who's living out of his van and he's trying to succeed in some way in his life there, or a man who's, met with a real spiritual crisis throughout his stay in the villages and the conflict that arises with his wife. And the film shot beautifully. The characters within it, the subjects of the documentary are so fascinating, and just the content in general. I mean, it's a great movie, and I suggest this highly, especially even if you're not a documentary film person. A lot of people say, like, I don't want to watch any documentaries, but I can do nothing but recommend this. If you haven't seen any of Lance Oppenheim's short films, go on YouTube, look him up. I'll put one up in the notification thing right now. Check it out. If you like that, check out Some Kind of Heaven. Great documentary. Another movie I watched was Wildlife with Jake Gyllenhaal, directed by Paul Dano, based off the book, I believe, of the same name. Now, I haven't read the book, but through watching this film, it felt like one of those book adaptations that almost leans into the source a lot, and I think in some ways to its detriment. Unlike Fantastic Mr. Fox, this movie feels very slow-paced in a way that I don't think it should. And I have nothing against slow-paced movies. I mean, I love the theater, I love reading novels and stuff like that, and people regard that sometimes as slow burns, but how it worked in this movie just wasn't for me. I really tried to, and there are some distinct scenes that I think are really well done. I mean, the directing's there and the performance is there. I think it's the content of the story itself that is where it's lost on me. There's some great scenes inside of the film itself, but overall I wasn't the biggest fan. But also, what do I know, because it has like a 93 on Rotten Tomatoes, so take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. Trial of the Chicago 7. So I originally watched this movie back when it came out in October. I'm a bit of an Aaron Sorkin fan. I mean, I love The West Wing, Steve Jobs movies, up there with some of my favorite movies of all time. The Social Network, again, a great movie in my opinion, and I'm kind of like I feel like a guilty fan of Aaron Sorkin. In some ways, I feel like I shouldn't necessarily like his work as much as I do, but I'm a fan. I enjoy his screenplays, his television, his movies, his plays, everything across the board. I'm a fan of his work. So with that bias out of the way, this is his second movie that he's directed. And I, on first viewing, thought that this was a very successful film. We had to rewatch it again for school, and we had a conversation about it because we were meeting the assistant director, Joe Reedy, in class, and that was a really interesting experience too, to kind of see into a little bit of the process of assistant directing in terms of cinema and how it would work on a big feature like Trial of Chicago 7. Upon having a discussion with my classmates, though, I guess there's a large question about how specific parts of the story are told and their historical inaccuracies. And I understand those grievances, those disagreements in the way the film was made. And then it's this question of how do you justify what's right and real? It's this kind of big battle. At the end of the day, I do think it captures the essence of the events accurately, and I still do enjoy the film. Sacha Baron Cohen knocks his performance out of the park. I thought the structure in the way it tells the story by going in between the courtroom and in between the events actually unfolding, I found very compelling and made it really easy to follow and keep up with. Overall, I thought Trial of Chicago 7 was a very good film, despite perhaps many of its flaws. Space Jam, a classic. I love Space Jam. I rewatched this again for school, but I really enjoyed it, of course, as always. I mean, I think it's a great, timeless kind of story. I'm really looking forward to the second Space Jam that's coming out, I believe, later this year. I mean, what can you say? Michael Jordan and the Looney Tunes. Great movie. Daddy Longlegs, the third or fourth, I'm not exactly sure, Safdie brother movie. The Safdie brothers have recently made Uncut Gems, Good Time, and those movies. And Daddy Longlegs is a family drama and feels to some that perhaps it could be a little different among the filmography of the Sadfi brothers, but I think it's still very a Sadfi-esque film in the way they shoot it, from the technical standpoint of using a lot of long lenses, and there's certain intimacies with the camera that the actor has. I thought it was a very good movie. I really enjoyed it. It's on Amazon, I believe, so I think it's worth checking out. Hannah and her sisters, Woody Allen movie from the 80s, I believe. I liked it overall. I actually think this is probably a little higher on my list of Woody Allen films. I'm a relative fan of Woody Allen overall, but I did like this movie. I thought it had a strong ensemble cast, and the general themes and the way that the multiple stories play into each other, I think really kind of meshes well together, and is across the board a pretty solid movie. It's on Amazon, so if you want to check it out there. All the performances are great. The content's good, and I relate to Woody Allen's character in the level of his health anxiety. So, And Cafe Society, another Woody Allen movie that I watched because I like Jesse Eisenberg, and I was actually pleasantly surprised with the performance of Kristen Stewart in this. I actually felt like I saw some dimension in Kristen Stewart, which I don't particularly see in a lot of her other films. I think she is pretty good in Into the Wild. I think she's also pretty good in On the Road. She's also pretty good in On the Road, I think. So, yeah, to give her that, I think she has a really strong performance in this movie, and I think Jesse Eisenberg does as well. I mean, it's very Woody Allen-ish movie. Young guys going out to LA to try to work and break out in New York and stuff like that. Things go wrong. He falls in love with the wrong person, yada, yada, yada. It's on Amazon. Another good movie, kind of mellow. I mean, I wouldn't say, like, overwhelmingly you have to see this movie, but if you enjoy Woody Allen, you'll enjoy this movie. Steve Carell's in it as well, and he plays his role really well, and there's a lot of complicated romance throughout the film, so if that's what you're in for, hop on that train. It's pretty good all in all. There are also more movies that I had watched this month. However, I due to time probably am going to cut some of these, so I'll put every movie I watched in the description, so you can just have that full list and links to where to watch them. On to the next segment, I suppose. I filmed that entire segment wrong. I have to redo the whole thing. But it's okay, cause at least now I know what I'm gonna talk about. Yeah. Okay, so, what's going on, guys? It is another month of our lives that has happened since the last episode of Explorations, which feels like it came out very recently. These 4 weeks of February have felt very tight and compressed, but that's okay. That's life, as long as everyone is still doing well, healthy, and good. Things are abundant. So you might notice that this is the first episode of Explorations without like a narrative thread, something I've been doing in the past 2 episodes. That's because I spent a lot of time on that poetry segment that you saw right at the start of the episode. And I took a lot of care to work on that particular segment because I think it was important for me to be able to kind of dive into a process and stay committed to it. And even though it's only about a minute, 30 seconds, the different aspects of creating it to, writing the poem itself and then working with the visuals and thinking out how to pair the visuals, edit it, music, all that stuff. I want to take a lot of time and do a good job and not make it like weird and shoddy or something. So I tried to put a lot of effort and emphasis into that segment of this month's episode because I think it's a greater perspective on the amount of work that can go into something, even if it seems
brief temporally. There's still like a lot of working parts and a lot of things that go into creating something that's only a minute 30. So I think that's like that. I'm glad I went out of my way to spend a lot of time on it, and even if that means that we have just a movie review segment and like a little talking head bit like this. So the month of March is here for me. I'm filming this in March, which means that it's almost a year into the pentagram, the palindromic, the pizza pie pandemic. So that's a big milestone for the past year. I mean, the span of time between last March and where we are now has definitely felt like the most compressed and tight and quickest span of time I feel like I've experienced if I'm like relating two things that are a year apart from each other, like even birthdays and stuff like that feel further apart, which is another thing coming up in March. So two big things: 20th birthday, year into the pandemic. March is gonna be a busy month. It always seems to be in some respect, but this month, all about that poem, man. I don't know. I've also watched a lot of 52 Weeks from 2 years ago now, just to see how everything's evolved in my own life, in my style, in my editing, and to do that critical reflection is really valuable, especially when it was paired with that segment where I was talking about the movies and stuff like that. I'll keep this brief there, So I guess I hope to see you guys on episode 4. April 2nd, I think, is the first Friday of April. Weird to think that it's going to be April once this one comes. Doing stuff like this really makes like the months feel a lot quicker, I guess, when you have some kind of monthly deadline. Good and bad, for what it's worth. Alright, peace.